Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 17th Teacher Chat Time with Teacher program today. The program will take about an hour. My name is Momo Luen, Director of Yangon Heritage Trust from Myanmar, and currently the Vice Chairperson too of Teacher. I will be introducing today's talk and also be moderating the session. For those newcomers today, Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance, or SEACHA, as we are known, established in 2019 with a mission to promote effective government-community partnership in cultural heritage management and to strengthen the ASEAN social cultural community as a people-centered third pillar of ASEAN and serve as a networking forum between ASEAN member organizations. SEACHA currently consists of 8 founding members. All are civil society organizations from 8 ASEAN countries advocating to protect and promote, build tangible and intangible cultural heritage. Please visit our website, www.seacha.org, for more information about our members and our works. Chat Time with SEACHA is a monthly talk program virtually held on Saturday afternoons. Chat Time series emphasize on the strong connection between local wisdom as part of regional cultural heritage and its contribution to mitigate and adapt climate change. All the talks done before are available in SEACHA YouTube channel. Today's program is under the second year theme, Cultural Wisdom for Climate Action. This year, we opened the floor for young academics and practitioners in the region, age range between 18 to 35. Please allow me to introduce one of those young speakers. Today is the turn of Brunei, Jerusalem. Joshua Anak Belayan, a youth from an indigenous community in Brunei, is a director of finance and sponsorships at ASEAN Youth Advocacy Network, Brunei chapter. He is also currently a YSEALI academic fellow doing environmental studies, where he focuses on bringing faith, culture, and environmentalism. Joshua has been selected as youth representing Brunei to attend the SEACHA conference on cultural wisdom for climate action, the Southeast Asian contribution, which is going to be held between 12 to 14 January next year in Bangkok, nearly 4 months from now. He will present youth perspective together with his 15 fellow youths from ASEAN nations. They have been working so hard preparing this. Today, he will talk about Indigenous youth, culture, and climate action, which he is trying to bring faith and culture-based environmentalism to advocate climate action in the policy-making level. It is a synopsis of the group he is in that will present in the SEACHA conference next January. Let's hear what an important role youth play in initiating climate action by applying indigenous faith and cultural practices. Any questions you may have during the talk, please leave them in the Q&A box, and we will pick them up at the end. And Joshua, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Momo. Before I start, I would like to share my screen. Okay, all right, ladies and gents, thank you for attending today's talk. I was thinking of giving myself an introduction again, but Momo has made the liberty to actually introduce myself, and quite well, actually. So thank you very much. I think before I start, I would like to say many thanks to SEACHA for giving me the opportunity to talk at this afternoon session, live from both Thailand and wherever you guys are right now. So yeah, I'm Joshua from Brunei. And I think that a slightly missing information about myself. I mean, recently, along with being IAN member, I was recently selected as a member of the Young Advisory Group on Environmental and Climate Justice for the ASEAN Pacific region by the UNFCCC, UNDP, and UN Human Rights. And also by trade, I'm actually studying biology in the University of Brunei Darussalam, and I'm actually in my final year right now. So yeah, that's a brief kind of like background about myself. So without further ado, I would like to explain the agenda for today's talk. So first is introduction, basically elaborating about my Indigenous identity and how it inspired me to advocate for climate change and Indigenous identity, and basically explain the grievances and challenges that we have not only in Borneo, but collectively around the globe, in the challenges of Indigenous people on retaining their land rights or their livelihood. So third, we talk about the importance of having allies in empowering Indigenous people and their climate agenda. Fourth is basically talk a little bit of some cultural and climate advocacy works that me and my colleague have worked in Brunei. And fifth is basically giving a synopsis of faith, culture, and environment, basically the concept of it, because it's a relatively new concept in the ASEAN region as well. Not only in ASEAN region, but I believe globally as well. It is a relatively new concept, and bringing this concept from regional awareness to from regional concepts to regional awareness, and perhaps in the future, regional action. So finally, we're talking about what's next and how can we move forward. So we start with Borneo and the term Dayak. So basically, the term Dayak is actually a coin term created by the British and the Dutch to basically group Indigenous people in Borneo as one specific thing. So prior to this, the concept of Dayak was not really known. Actually, we don't actually call our people as Dayak, but nowadays, especially in Kalimantan, they're quite receptive to the concept of being called Dayak. So for the sake of convenience as well, I also be using this term Dayak. And also some of the community in Sarawak, they prefer to be called Orang Ulu, or interior people. So without further ado, I'd like to give more introduction on who are the Dayaks and how can we characterize this Dayak people group. So they have to be a riverine or hill-dwelling ethnic group. They encompass over 200 indigenous groups all over Borneo, which include East Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, Brunei, and Kalimantan. And what we're famous for, we are famous for longhouses, as you can see there, and the bottom left, and the tattoos. We're quite well known with the tattoos as well, and we're great with barbecue. Might be a little bit more biased, but I'm having a barbecue later after the show, so looking forward to that. And finally, we're fierce headhunters, and I think notoriously we are known as fierce headhunters. We actually stopped headhunting briefly in the early 19th century, and then during World War II happened. Basically, the Dutch and the British were basically finding solutions on how to beat the Imperial Japanese army. So what they do was legalizing headhunting again in the early 20th century. So all of this Dayak community in the deep interior of Borneo actually start headhunting and killing Japanese. And after the war ended, they banned headhunting again. So yeah, that is one kind of like fun fact about headhunting in the island of Borneo. So I am actually half Iban and half Kayan. So the Iban side of my family is we settled in Brunei, specifically in Kukup, which is in a region in Ulu Blight, while my mom is Kayan, and she is from the Long Laput area in Ulu Baram. So the music that you listened just now is actually called Sape, to some of you who have not listened to it. So as you can hear, the voice of the musical instrument mimics the voice of the river and the forest. So yeah, that's another fun fact about being a Dayak people in Borneo. So I would like to tell you how I start advocating for Indigenous empowerment and climate action. And actually, I have to thank a friend for this. So my origin story was actually attending a friend's roundtable discussion event where it was supported by the US Embassy back in Brunei. I think this was in maybe early 2020. Oh no, actually late 2020. Yeah. So I remembered my brother was invited to attend the talk, and I was quite intrigued because he showed me, oh, do you want to be a part of this discussion? It's a collective of Indigenous youth in Brunei, and we'll talk about our struggles and challenges. And I said yes, and I didn't regret it. And I learned actually like a lot, in the sense where I learned about my own culture and remember that there's one lecturer, his name is Dr. Merlin Franco. He is a lecturer in my university, but I don't even know about his existence before. He teach a module called Biocultural Diversity. And there he basically taught me that the IBAN actually developed a natural calendar which mimics the season of Borneo. And I was blown away because creating a calendar is very sophisticated. Right? It's quite difficult. And I guess for me, it's like I always think, I don't know why, maybe this age, maybe because of colonialism or what, or there's this prejudice against my own races that were not able to do something of this complex. So I'm glad I restructured my way of thinking. And when he told me that the fruiting season doesn't follow the natural calendar anymore, he basically told that our climate, especially in Borneo, is changing. And for instance, durian season used to be around in December, and now you can see it in October. So you can see it is going in faster prior to the original season tracking. So from there, this concept arrived. I also didn't know the role of Indigenous people in biodiversity conservation, biodiversity conservation, because from there, I actually meet Dr. Merlin, and from there as well, I learned that we have collectively around the globe, the Indigenous people make up only 5% of the world population, but they protect about 80% of the global biodiversity. And often they are marginalized and not put at the discussion table or not put to control about their livelihood. And next, I want to talk about something which is, I think, first time I share in a kind of forum. A little bit nervous on this, but I think it's in Brunei, it's well known, this issue, but I feel like maybe today I'm going to talk about it. There are, and it's an issue not only shared by me, but by most Indigenous people in the world globally as well. I'm one of the more lucky one, which I will explain later. So there's a glass ceiling basically. So I am a Bruneian, which born and bred. My ancestors also was here, never left the island, but we hold a permanent resident or slash stateless identification card, meaning I'm deprived of certain rights and privileges compared to general Bruneians. So for the longest of time, I feel like I will never be able to do anything meaningful in Brunei. And my strategy was longing to move out of here to find a country that would accept me and give me a genuine identification and a real passport for me to able to travel. At one point, I almost applied for Malaysian citizenship, But when I went to the immigration office in Malaysia, I feel a sense of uneasiness and almost feel betrayal in some sense. So I stopped that chapter and I'm like, okay, I cannot. I feel so wrong, and the rest is history. I'm still stateless individual. So there's certain rights and privileges which I'm deprived of. One instances is when I traveled, I have to procure a visa. Sometimes the visa get approved and some doesn't. And then, for instance, in higher education, I have to pay for it, and I don't receive stipend as well, like other general Bruneians. So anyone here who are willing to sponsor, I am always up for conversation after today's conversation. But jokes aside, I am in a more privileged position. I'm a stateless individual, but I am still able to have a good education, a British style education. The way of me speaking English, pronouncing my word well without an accent, it's a statement that shows that I am able to have a good education, while some may not be able to even access education and also access healthcare. So from there, I tried to look inward, in the sense where I bring this quote: "Only Dayak can kill Dayaks." This quote is actually said by Sir James Brooke. So he used this context when he was actually conquering the Sarawak side of Borneo. So he is the first white Raja of Sarawak. So there's a certain period of time in Borneo where we were colonized by white rulers, and the way that he conquered the region was actually by divide and conquer. But in today's context, I use this in terms of mindset. So Dayak being myself and my mindset. Only my mindset can prevent me from procuring the opportunities that I have. So I try to have a different outlook and try to find, okay, how can I not think this way of like, oh, I'm assuming that I am not able to do something big or something different for my community in Brunei. So the next slide is basically giving a new outlook and perspective on how I could be a service to my people, my country, and my sultan. And yes, I acknowledge limitation exists in my case, but I do not let that hinder my desire to be an agent of change. More often than not, this is what I learned in the future, going inward, going forward, that people actually will help you if you have the credential and the work ethic, and never stop trying. If you don't know, if you don't try, then you will never know what's your limit. And if you do face challenges, there are always opportunity that will come by. And pardon me, let me drink some water. So I want to go to this slide where the importance having allies in empowering indigenous people in their climate agenda. So I'm like super honored. I never would have thought that I'll be able to be involved in a huge project like this. For instance, last year when Brunei was hosting their ASEAN Summit, I had the liberty to lead and also become one of the delegate for the ASEANYouCan dialogue representing Brunei. And we gathered around 16 youth, and we actually presented at the 16th ASEAN Minister meeting on environment. The one there you can see is the country that attended our hearing on the Bandar Seri Begawan declaration. And the one on your left is the Climate Action Week, which is a climate action workshop which focuses on giving hypothetical situations for people to create solutions on. So in this slide, I want to say about YSEALI. And personally, it was a kind of like a stepping stone in a sense, because YSEALI previously was only given to Brunei nationals. So PR stateless like myself are not able to get this opportunity. So I actually just shot my shot, and I hand in my application, and then I went to the interview, and then I told them, I was frank about my situation. I said, oh, I'm PR stateless, I don't have a real passport, so everything, anywhere I go, any transit I have to pass through, I have to have a visa. I hope you guys don't mind with that. And then there was like, oh yeah, we don't mind, and we're actually quite interested to have you be a part of the academic fellowship program. And I was selected. From here, I even had the opportunity to do an internship with the East West Center over virtually, and I learned a lot about working with ASEAN nationals, and also working along with American national and their way of life. So I think at an early age, I feel like it was a privilege to get exposed to this, to working with people of different cultures. So I want to talk about cultural and climate advocacy works in Brunei. And before that, I'd like to, many of my works and success are not possible without the help of my colleagues over in ASEAN Youth Advocate Network Brunei. So we are relatively young. We are almost over 2 years in, and most of us are, I think our median age is 24, 25. So we do a lot of grassroots activities. So our mission is basically, we aim to instill a passion of service and sense of initiative in ASEAN youth advocates through volunteer-based initiative and program catered to support advocacies. So our objectives is, through this initiative, the organization aims to inspire the youth to take better action towards the betterment of their respective countries and ASEAN, while continuing to further the achievement of advocacy through mobilization and sustainability of operation. So getting the action sustainable in the long run. So the next slide is basically few projects which fits today's discussion. So first is Unity in Diversity. It is a dialogue session where we highlight the issues of marginalization, stereotype, and microaggression of minorities, especially indigenous minorities in Brunei. So from there, we actually talk about the history of nation building in Brunei, especially in the early 20th century. We also address briefly on the issue of statelessness, and we also talk about why certain Rakyat Jatis, or these Rakyat Jatis are called the indigenous people of Brunei, recognized indigenous people in Brunei, celebration are not celebrated as national holiday. So that's one of the few discussion that we go through. So next, as mentioned, the ASEAN Youth Dialogue, we gathered around 16 youths from all over ASEAN, and we created the Bandar Seri Begawan Declaration, which I will further elaborate later. So next is the Climate Action Week, and the recent adjourned mock-up was a more climate policy leaning workshop where we give a hypothetical situation for delegates, and from there they have to create solutions from it. So in the Climate Action Week, we collaborated with BCCS, and which is the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, and the Brunei Youth Council, along with Community for Brunei and BIBD, Bank Islam Brunei Darussalam, where that's for the mock-up. But for Climate Action Week, we actually work with BCCS and Brunei Youth Council, along supported by the UNDP office in the Asia Pacific region, to conduct workshops. So as you can see here, the gentleman, handsome gentleman there on your left side, your bottom left side, his name is Din Long. He's from France, but his background is actually Vietnamese. So he was actually running a workshop which focused on NDCs. NDCs are the National Determined Contributions, or basically pledges of certain countries and government on how, and also basically learning how do we pressure government to adhere to the promise they made in the Conference of Party, basically, which is COP. So next is the concept of faith, culture, and environment. So the case for faith, culture, and environment. This concept is new to me in the sense where I was introduced to it when I joined the YSEALI Academic Fellowship Program. I had the liberty to be mentored by Sofiah Jamil. She was kind of our supervisor when we were teaching the class on faith and culture-based environmental initiative. So the rationale for this is in ASEAN itself, there's more than 70% of the ASEAN population that still adhere to a belief system. So since most religious organizations invest in poverty alleviation projects, we were thinking of like, we aim to highlight how climate change is intertwined with the disruption on the economically disadvantaged group. And second, explaining how mitigation and adaptation in this affected community can lessen poverty. So basically diverting the investment away from just solely focus on poverty alleviation, but diverting it to what causes poverty in the first place, which is climate change. We also wanted to give an opportunity to highlight local and indigenous knowledge on conservation biology and how they have utilized nature-based solution in mitigating and adapt to changes in their environment. So one of the practices, this is just a brief synopsis. If you guys attend in January, I'll tell more about it, but today I'll just give one. So you guys have to go to Thailand next year in January to see more agro practices and forest management by the Bornean tribes. So one concept is by the Iban tribe in Sungai Utik. They believe in this concept called Tembawang and sacred land. So Tembawang is basically, so the Ibans are shifting cultivating community. So meaning when the land is no longer fruitful, they will move to another land and they'll basically develop that area. But the thing is, once they left that area that their ancestors have leave, they are prohibited to go back there to hunt or cut the trees, just to enable the trees, the ecosystem to regenerate for the next generation. So in spiritual term, they believe that ancestral spirit or the Petara believed to inhabit this sacred forest and the Tembawang. So in this area, these areas are marked with jar or tajau, and trees in this area are prohibited to cut. However, foraging and hunting activities are permitted. So as a part of my YSEALI program here, I actually did research a few faith groups in the US. These are Green Muslim, One Earth, Sangha, Ecosec, Hazont, and Interfaith Power and Light. So before I get a little bit more further on the mini grants on faith and culture-based initiative that I was a part on, I would like to basically tell the precursor to this. So like I mentioned prior to this, I had the liberty to actually did an internship with the East West Center over in Hawaii, but doing it virtually. So what we did was we teach the concepts to the upcoming academic fellow, because during that time it was COVID. So most of our activities were online. So we were doing most of our workshop or teaching the class online. So after we basically teach the concepts to them, we were given mini grants to work along with this new academic fellow, and basically created a project on how can we expose this concept to people, not only in Southeast Asia, but we also tried to get individuals from the states as well. So first is the School for the Planet. This is actually led by a friend of mine. Her name is Trisha. She was a senior of mine in the academic fellow program. And during this time, I was playing more of a supporting role. So Story of Creation is an interfaith and intercultural exchange of story and ideas and practices that aims to discuss how religion, spirituality, and conservation are intricately interconnected. So this program is a 4-week virtual workshop that seeks to engage youth across Southeast Asia to have a dialogue and to celebrate faith work in conservation. So this is basically giving or establishing the first concepts on how faith and culture-based initiative can work and how can we expand it. So next is the Rhyme for Nature. This is something which I work along with few of my colleagues. I don't know if they are here. If you're here, maybe you can give a shout out. But this is a mini grant that we got from the State Department. We were thinking of doing Rhyme for Nature, which is a song and slam poetry competition for talented young artists in Southeast Asia to show their performances, but how their faith inspire and guide people to create environmental resilience, ecosystem health, and thriving biodiversity. So the rationale to this was basically, youths. But first, let me form my sentence. So we were adamant of getting youth exposed to the concept, as they are the demographic who will first involve most in climate action in grassroots level and are losing its cultural roots from dominant contemporary arts culture. So the virtual event is done parallel with visiting academic fellow in Hawaii. So the people who were attending the academic fellowship in Hawaii, they were the judges for the competition. So logistically, it's immensely difficult to run because the time difference is 18 hours and we only get answers almost after a day. So yeah, in some way, I'm glad it was over, but I feel like the reach was quite modest in the sense that we managed to get 48 individual virtually. Along with that, we also have 30 plus academic fellow in Hawaii. And we also managed to receive 17 applicants where we get 10 finalists. So as I mentioned, this concept was actually exposed by my mentor, Sofiah, when I was doing my internship with the East-West Center. So it prompted me to highlight these in the ASEANYouCan dialogue, where we managed to include the importance of Indigenous people as a stakeholder of bioconservation, and nature-based solution. And we also called upon faith-based group to contribute to climate action and basically amplifying the voice of faith-based or cultural-based environmentalism in the ASEAN level. So this is perhaps my biggest crowning moment as of now, which was the Bandar Seri Begawan Declaration. It was officially inducted as a key deliverables in the 38th and the 39th ASEAN Summit. And hopefully it is a start of something more, from regional awareness to regional action. So I hope in the future, if anyone here are in the position of power that could influence this, I hope there is effective change from awareness to regional action. So, oh damn, this is the last slide. So what's next? How can we do moving forward? So today's session is being aware. Today's presentation is an awareness program where most of us are first exposed to the concept of faith and culture-based environmentalism. So pressure your local politician, especially in top-bottom society like most of Southeast Asia. Pressure doesn't always mean protest. Introducing the concepts to this policymaker can be a genuine first step to getting change started. So for instance, when we were doing the 16th ASEAN Minister meeting on environment, we just briefly talked about our faith-based group and how can it help to mitigate and be a part of the climate action, fight for climate action, basically. So third is, if you're in the position to influence change, then include not only indigenous people, but other marginalized groups. Hear their grievances and how can you add them in their struggles. And finally, rediscovering your roots. I genuinely believe all faith, all culture, and all background, one way or another, have hints of bioconservation in them. And perhaps if you look inward and see how it can inspire you and how you could be an agent of change from the faith and culture-based initiative. So that is all from me. Thank you very much. And I hope I'll be seeing questions from you lots. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua, for the thoughtful and inspiring presentation. It's really, I'm bravo to all your very open discussions and sharing the challenges that you face, and that I think the audience and I have that more understanding of what the indigenous people across the countries. I think the problems as well as the practices you have just mentioned will be have been shared among that ASEAN nations and the indigenous region. I'm sure the audience might have that question to you on this discussion. And I guess before anyone has started, that I may begin with a question to you, if I may.
Yes, you may.
And may I request audience, if you have any question, please drop in the Q&A box for Joshua to answer. For me, because you have been quite aware with the life of indigenous people, how their faith based in their daily livelihood practice in and then how that can also impact the natural surrounding them. So, but the world has been changing with the technology and things, and over the generation, I think maybe the young generation might have denied of the faith that their ancestors have been adapting for centuries. So how this thing can impact, or how that can be delivered to the younger generation, or those the best practices.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me form my sentence there. So basically, like myself, like you said, there's certain faith or cultural beliefs which the younger people or modern people, they don't adhere to it anymore. Maybe because they, for instance, like in my case, I'm in indigenous background, but my family are Christians. So there's few practices that we no longer practice. So like I mentioned, when I attended the roundtable discussion, I actually was quite kind of shocked in the sense, because I was always told that sometimes when people talk it, say it, you always believe, or sometimes you assume that is correct. So that's why stereotyping is not the best solutions in the sense. So when I went to the workshop, I actually relearning a lot about my own culture, and also restructuring my thoughts, because I always have this prejudice against my own people. I don't think we were capable of doing this. So sometimes it's the individual as well. So for me, I was always fascinated by history and by culture. So that basically prompted me to start the works of conserving my identity and also working on climate action. So it goes hand in hand, and coincidentally, it goes hand in hand for my case. So I hope that answers your case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I will pick out some of the questions that audience have asked.
All right.
I will start with the first one that is from the anonymous attendee. It's,
okay.
Can you define faith?
Faith is, I would say faith, like people often think religion is faith, but religion is an organization. Faith for me is your personal relationship with a deity, or if you are more a spiritual person, then towards a certain feeling. I think that's anything that make you feel out of this world, for me, counts as faith. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so.
Yeah.
And one question from Jang Ilori Rementen. I asked, the question is, as a Bruneian, and how do we navigate and address our environmental concerns since we do not have politicians?
I know Elroy. Elroy is actually the person that hosted the roundtable discussion. So I have a lot to thank to him. If I didn't attend his workshop at the first place, I would not be inspired in a sense. They are. I mean, from us in Brunei, it's more on you're not going to do a disruptive change. That's the fact of matter. We live in a top bottom society, so the only way you can do is doing like slowly lobbying your interests, or slowly convincing them that your case is how does it is rallying to your case. So first is that you need to strategize how. We were always told about getting grassroots level change. Yes, I'm not saying that it's not true, that's not right. It's just that in certain countries, even if you want to do change, you need to be smart in how you approach certain challenges or certain grievances. So for me, it's just when we attend all of this event where you meet people of the government, you just you put them inside. Oh, I'm this. We are from this village, and I hope we can do change in this part area. And we actually did that. Actually, one instances was we talk about digital connectivity, and in my village, there's no line, there's no phone receptions, and it was kind of something personal because my uncle died because there's no reception, because there's no phone reception, so you cannot really call family to catch them. So you only can call emergency contact, but sometimes your family would only know once you're already out of the village. So from there, actually, when we first exposed that, people were oh, this is fascinating. And when after we finished that workshop, they were more interested and they asked us to do a follow-up on that event. So probably there'll be changes in there. So yeah, I hope that answer your question, Elroy.
I think that's you may also need some help of media and or publicity of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like today. And another question is from our Katrini, our chairperson of CICHR. It's a question and statement is like, congratulations to all the great efforts done by Joshua and youth group. I'm wondering what is the most difficult challenge you are facing to deliver your program, and what is the next program already in your mind to be achieved soon? So that's a personal question.
This basically the work that I've done mostly was like I think most of the people in Sichuan know that I mostly work on climate workshop, climate policies, and climate action, and I believe from there it's one of the avenue for me to do an actual change, and for me, at least in Brunei, that's something which is not sensitive in a sense. So people in the government are effectively wanting to meet their NDCs. So if there are support from the top, it is quite easy for you to actually do change, and not only support but also financial, which is very important. Financial support also comes with it. So for me, it was just strategizing how we could navigate through this program and how can we get the most exposure and also get the most funding. So yeah, next program, I guess I'm a part of the climate action youth climate action group for UNDP and the Asia Pacific region. So I hope from there I could influence the grievances, especially people in the Borneo area. I actually started to meet Kalimantan youth because I'm only exposed to the Sarawak and the Sabah side of Borneo because it's the closest to me. So even though acknowledging that the Indonesian side of Kalimantan is way bigger, huge. So I am starting to look into getting the voices of the people in the Kalimantan side get amplified, and I'll try my best to get their voice get heard, especially in the Asia Pacific region, and how it can influence policy in the regional level. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's across the border, working together, sharing all the similar missions. Another question is from the anonymous attendee. It's I really loved your sharing, Joshua. I was just wondering on how could we translate sustainable practices known by Indigenous people for ages into a key environmental solution adopted by all. It's maybe a more to become a concrete solution.
Yeah.
Or adaptation. Yeah.
I think the something that which was interesting was, so I believe, I hope everyone here knows that Indonesia is moving their capital city from Jakarta to Borneo, which is Nusantara. And what they are aiming to accept nature-based solution, and a part of nature-based solution is many indigenous people actually adhere to nature-based solution. So if they adamantly believe in creating a city that intertwined with nature, then they have to actually walk a lot with indigenous people in that specific localities. So it is still too soon to say. So that's why, you know, some people, they are not really enthusiastic of the move from Jakarta to Nusantara, because the environmental effect might be immense. But for me, it's still early to judge. So I will see maybe in, I don't know, 10 years later that not maybe not 10, maybe 5 years later, and see how did they adhere to this policy that they have set in stone? And if not, then this is the opportunity for you to actually start criticizing the Indonesian government. So yeah.
Okay, there's another question from an anonymous candidate. It's how do we approach indigenous communities to be involved in environmental action if, for example, the person who are not indigenous and not make an initiative as white saviors, complies or cultural appropriation? So
let me form my sentence. Sometimes it does have that inkling, but that for me it's like if you want to do effective change, sometimes you do it unknowingly. People appropriated certain culture unknowingly, and sometimes people who keep the culture is someone not of that culture. So that's the funny thing sometimes. So if you ask me what's the line, I'm not sure. This is because appropriation is a definition that is done by each individual. So each individual have their own tolerance on how much cultural appropriation is. Okay, I hope that answered the first. And for me, it's like you have to not be there and said like, oh, I'm here to save you, but rather when you go there, how can I help you or ease your grievances in heading for a solution. So for instance, they are trying to trying to regenerate their forest. So don't be there and say, oh, I have my scientists and I bring all of this, or I think your method is wrong, my method is right. So that is obviously wrong, right? So what you can do is you go there, and then perhaps if you have a team of scientists, you go actually learn their regenerative concepts, and you're like, oh, okay, this is how they do it. And then maybe you can have a dialogue session with them and said like, okay, according to us, this is this, but it's up to you. This is where you live. This is your way of life. So if you want to take our suggestion, you can take. So it's more of like supporting rather than spearheading. So if you want to help, I feel like you should support rather than say, oh, I will lead this. You just follow me how I am going to solve this.
Yeah, may I add here then to initiate this faith-based environmentalism, you've got to believe in that faith, or would it be better? What do you think?
Can you repeat your question?
Sorry, to initiate, because you believe that initiatives will really help protect the climate change impact, then you have to follow that faith that indigenous believe. I mean, you yourself is required to believe, or would that be better? Or
it's so basically like what so some people are entitled to their belief, right? So you can be an indigenous person, but you don't believe in the spiritual aspect. You can be that. You can be that, but you shouldn't discount it that there are knowledge that builds up over centuries. Yes, sometimes it's in maybe local language called dongeng or mythical, but you try to have an open mind, and for the most longest of time, people often think that it's just a primitive thought and you shouldn't think it that way. And we just try to look it in a more critical aspect, and you try to see, and I feel like that is how it is right now. People are waking up and see that, oh man, this is not how we're supposed to live our life. And you can see like this, especially in Amazon, there one day actually a data actually said that the people always think the Amazon forest is still pristine. It's actually not pristine. It's actually was already developed by all the ancient Aztecs, not Mayan, but yeah, the other civilization
Yeah.
within that area.
Mhm.
But they know how to sustainably manage
Mhm.
them. But
Mhm.
we are not able to get it because they were killed off by diseases that was brought by the European when they first came there. So they were not dying from conquest. They was actually dying from diseases, and they don't have the natural immunity to it. So from there, we also don't have the opportunity to learn on how they actually sustainably develop the Amazon rainforest, and that thing apply as well to Borneo. We are second biggest tropical rainforest compared to Amazon, and we are the second oxygen carbon capture per square area as well. So people often focus on Amazon because they are big and large, but we are slightly small, but our impact is strong in a sense. And in terms of age as well, our forest is more older. So the older you are, in a sense, in a scientific terms, the more evolved you are, in a sense. So the plants that live in that area actually learn more. They have more experience on the changes of climate, so they know how to work differences. Okay, if there's new diseases, they'll know how to change it, how to fight it, because they are longer. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last one, I think it's from an anonymous attendee. It's at times, Indigenous communities are not aware they could be a co-agent of change in environmental action. How do we address this communal change is possible without approaching it as a savior or damsel in distress mentality?
I actually answered this already. So yeah, I think that's it. We actually, yeah, I think we are also finishing already. It's 3 already in Thailand.
Yes, but if I may, yeah, and I think you have mentioned about what next, and maybe my last question from myself is, it's how would you organize it's more young people of the indigenous origin to be continue with their practice and by understanding really well that it's protecting the not only the region but saving the world. How would you continue doing so? More outreaching.
Yes, first it's more outreaching, but it's also first more outreaching and getting inspired. So if you manage to inspire 1 or 2, it amplified a lot more, and these people will inspire another 1 or 2 people, or maybe more. So outreaching is might be a cliche answer, but a genuine answer nonetheless. And second, it is, I feel like it's a DNA thing. It's like I might be far removed from my real, or some people might say an original mindset or original cultural identity, but still I have this sense of longing. Well, like personally, I live in Brunei, where a I look like the majority people. So like I look like a Malay person. So people always assume that I'm Malay. So I would hang out with them and all that. But I never feel full, even though I can speak like them. I know their culture practices better. When I go home, it feels like there's always a gap in it. I feel like there's always something that is kind of like stopped me in a sense. So yeah, getting the network of people, especially in Brunei during that time, having a dialogue session with other indigenous youth, for me at that during that time, really big changes, because we were also talking about the struggles of uh, keeping our identity, but also moving forward with contemporary identity as well, and how can we navigate through that in our modern times. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Joshua, and very frank answer and sharing all these challenges and then indicating what can be happening in the future with all your effort. And also that will be a one example for the youth in the region to consider. And thank you all the audience and for your participation. And please stay tuned and keep eyes on the official announcement of this conference on the website, on our website and Facebook page. And for the announcement for our next chair time is Cha Laos. Ms. La Saukasian will talk about Talampen, the project for revitalizing Khmer culture and imagining a sustainable environment on 15th October. And thanks again to all the participants, and see you again in October. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Momo, and thank you,
Sure.
Sichang.